For thousands of years, plants and animals, and thereby their genetic resources, have been traded from country to country. Foreign products, combined with traditional knowledge about their properties, have enriched people and societies from abroad. For trade and exchange of genetic resources to remain successful and sustainable, the partners ought to share profits of their use on a fair basis and prevent any over-exploitation of biological diversity. In the fields of food, pharmaceuticals and cosmetics, for example, these rules were not always observed in the past. Countries of origin complained of so-called biopiracy, while the potential users deplored wasted opportunities for the development of new medicinal substances, personal care products, or food. The Nagoya Protocol, adopted in October 2010, now offers all stakeholders the chance to develop fair cooperation. It contains provisions on access to genetic resources, traditional knowledge, and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits.
We are very proud of the success that we have achieved tonight as the crowning of many weeks of work. We are grateful to all the parties for their spirit of compromise, their commitment, their willingness to reach a successful conclusion for this conference.
Now it is up to the member states to put these provisions into practice.
But what is this protocol all about? We know our world is rich. Animals, plants, and microorganisms contain billions of useful genetic resources. Some are already widely known, from using animals, cereals, and plants to discovering the first antibiotic. We have come a long way, and many of them are being used to produce medicine, food, cosmetics, and other important things. But a huge part of what nature holds for us still remains undiscovered. Take, for example, a plant deeply hidden in the rainforest. Perhaps only the local people are aware of what the plant can be used for. Yet its genetic properties could be beneficial to millions of people all over our planet. Sharing and using the world's genetic resources is important for the progress of humankind. This is why we need internationally agreed terms for ABS, access and benefit sharing, with regard to genetic resources. Already in 1992, at the UN Rio Summit, 172 countries agreed upon the CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and established basic principles of ABS. But what does this mean for the parties to this international agreement? Every country holds rights over animals, plants, and genetic resources found within its borders. Anyone from another country who wants to use such resources must respect these sovereign rights. How genetic resources can be accessed and benefits shared between users and providers can vary considerably. 3 African bioprospecting examples from the time prior to the adoption of the Nagoya Protocol highlight the diversity in this regard. The millet grain teff from Ethiopia, the hoodia plant from southern Africa, and the argan tree from Morocco.
In Ethiopia, peasants have planted and maintained millet called teff for 4,000 years. This grain bears a special characteristic. It contains no gluten, a substance that many people are allergic to. Planting in Ethiopia is tedious. The farmer has to prepare the seed without any machines. Also, he only has oxen to till the field and bring in the harvest.
Teff brings in more money than any other cereal. I can grow 6 tons a year. My family have plenty to eat, and I have teff to sell. Everyone eats teff here.
Here in Ethiopia, teff is above all used to bake round, flat loaves of bread. one of the country's most important staple foods, which is called injera.
I don't think we could live without teff. It gives us everything we need. Our family has never been really ill. Injera is like medicine for us.
I mean, sometimes I eat, Western food, but at least once a day I have to have injera. I don't know what scientific purpose it has, but to us it's good food. There are some people who correlate it with running because it has iron and everything.
For some years, farmers have also been growing teff in Europe. 375 Ethiopian varieties of teff have been tested in laboratories in the Netherlands for this purpose. There, teff seed has been improved step by step in the process in order to adapt it to European climatic conditions. Ultimately, 3 varieties of teff were successfully planted and harvested for the first time. Now, bread has also been baked with this grain in Europe, and further teff-based products were developed. To people who do not tolerate gluten, the grain that has been further developed here is a great relief.
At the beginning, it was really difficult, especially changing his diet. But now we've got used to it. We don't keep ordinary flour in the house at all now. We just have gluten-free flour. It works out fine, really.
This family has made a virtue out of necessity and opened up its own shop with gluten-free food. The baker is also doing well with his new product. The original agreement was Ethiopia gets a share of all sales and receives improved teff varieties and technical support for its farmers from the Dutch company, which is sole distributor for the grain in Europe.
The Ethiopians get 4 things from us. Firstly, 5% of the profit. Secondly, 10 euros for every hectare of cropland. Thirdly, we share our scientific findings with them. And fourthly, we want to create jobs in Ethiopia in future, because we want to export teff from Ethiopia as well.
Arbeidsplaatsen gaan creëren in Ethiopië samen met Ethiopiërs.
We have to change the way we did before because we need more now. Because there is a lot of population is high.
If they are introduced with the new technologies, maybe they can feed these 80 million people and even for Africa.
Sadly, what started off so well has since come to a standstill. The Ethiopian government introduced a law banning the export of grain, while the European entrepreneur suspended support for Ethiopia and its farmers owing to economic difficulties. In the absence of an appropriate legal basis, attempts to revive the relations between the partners have come to nothing. The San people live in the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa. To cope with hunger and to stay fit on their long hunting tours, they have used the hudia plant, which resembles a cactus, for centuries. It grows in the wild and can be harvested by hand and eaten raw.
Wat ons gaan eet het ou mense van ons gesien en hulle het vir ons vertel, julle wat nou daar goed eet, julle sal nie honger kry nie. Jy sal nie kos kry nie, maar jy sal nie gou honger voel nie.
You can just remove the thorns of it, then you can eat it for hunger. You can also use it when you are thirsty.
South African scientists examined the plant to reveal the secret of its hunger-reducing contents. They succeeded in isolating the agent P57 and applied for a patent in 1996. Feeling less hungry, this could help many people who are obese to lose weight. there is a huge market worldwide for diet food. Multinational corporations active in the fields of pharmaceuticals and food have acquired the P57 license and are now hoping for sales worth millions of dollars. When the SAN heard of the patent and the license being granted by the South African Research Institute, they demanded to have a share of possible profits and that a sustainable harvesting of their hoodia would be ensured. However, the case brought up many questions and controversial issues.
Dit is baie moeilik nou om te teken daai verdeling te. Om te sê geld, ek hoor moedia, koopbaar, daai goed. Ek weet my mense sit daar voor blad van hulle. En die voorblad wat hulle daar sit, is my kennis gesteel.
Various options were discussed in workshops.
This event belongs to a research project about decision making and benefit sharing. First, you need to decide whether you want to share your knowledge. Second, you need to decide how much you want for your knowledge and what. Third, if money comes in from benefit sharing, you need to decide what to do with it.
Finally, the SAN and the South African Research Institute reached an agreement. In the case of the hoodia patent one day yielding a product sold on the market, the SAN would be entitled to 6% of the income under license agreements. Yet, the patent has not been a sweeping success for the intended product development and has so far not enabled any significant profit sharing benefiting the SAN. Taking advantage of the absence of international rules, there are a large number of free riders who mainly use obscure ingredients and thus abuse the good reputation of hoodia. In Morocco, Berber women have been gathering the fruit and leaves of the indigenous argan tree since the 13th century. This tree grows in the south of the country and protects the region from desert encroachment. In order to protect the remaining trees, UNESCO has declared the Argan region a World Heritage Zone. The Moroccan women use the oil obtained from its nut-like fruit for medical and cosmetic skin care. For this purpose, they still collect, dry and process the nuts in traditional manner. Recently, however, they have no longer been doing this in isolation at home. They have formed cooperatives, enabling them to supply the European market. Some European trade partners have voluntarily declared their willingness to pay more than the usual market price for the delivery of argan products and provide social support for the cooperatives. Thus, the cooperative Al-Amal, for example, can run literacy courses for its members. We women of today no longer have anything to do with those of former times. We used to be illiterate and naive. We have learned a lot in the cooperative and have gone to school as well. We are able to communicate with everyone, to negotiate. There is a lot more to be earned than just money. Our whole personality has changed. The trade partners are benefiting from this too. They are getting a qualitatively high-value product that they have received in accordance with ethical standards and can market this accordingly. Now, besides those fair trade agreements, there is the chance to gain even higher value products from the oil and the leaves of the argan tree by using its genetic resources and related properties. The background: Zubida Charouf, a chemist at the University of Rabat, has analyzed argan oil and discovered valuable components. Argan oil is widely used in traditional medicine, in particular for the skin and to prevent cardiovascular disease, for rheumatism, etc. Some effects have been confirmed by science, for example the hydrating effect for the skin, as well as the anti-wrinkle effect and its properties to prevent cardiovascular diseases. The oil is not only effective cosmetically. We evaluated the nutritional effect of argan oil. So far, we have not done everything, but there are some results that seem interesting. Especially in the prevention of cardiovascular diseases, we found that argan oil is beneficial. There is something in traditional medicine against cancer. We haven't tested any nutritional interventions yet. We are still in the testing of cells. However, the cells show an anti-proliferative effect. We cannot say, though, at this point in time, whether it is beneficial or not. We must undertake further studies. Argan has had more than 40 patents applied for worldwide. Neither the women of the cooperative nor Professor Charuf know what is going to be produced abroad as a result of the research. In this case, too, properly negotiated and designed ABS agreements, framed by international rules and national legislations, would have been key to clarify how Morocco and how the women of the cooperatives could best benefit from scientific insights and financial gains. The examples demonstrate the huge potential that fair exchange has, and that the utilization of genetic resources is possible to the benefit of the user and the provider. However, in the past, unclear legal requirements in provider countries, the lack of the involvement of all relevant actors, such as the holders of traditional knowledge, as well as missing follow-up and compliance mechanisms in user countries, have led to unfair and unsatisfactory situations. Internationally accepted rules for everyone addressing these shortcomings became an urgent matter.
ABS Simply Explained. In 2010, the Nagoya Protocol fleshed out and specified the access and benefit sharing principles of the CBD for countries providing and using genetic resources in a legally binding way. An interested foreign researcher or company may only access a genetic resource if allowed by the providing country. This also includes traditional knowledge that is associated with the genetic resource, because traditional knowledge held by indigenous and local communities often plays an important role in the discovery of new active ingredients in genetic resources. In accordance with national legislation, PIC, prior informed consent, needs to be obtained from the providing country. The PIC request should outline the nature and the intended goal of the planned research and utilization of the genetic resource accessed. The MAT, the mutually agreed terms, will then define the benefits for the provider of the genetic resource as well as further contractual issues. These benefits could be monetary, such as a lump sum payment or a share of the profit, or non-monetary, such as a transfer of knowledge, technology, or training. These rules apply to commercial users as well as non-commercial users. The idea behind this concept is to help conserve our biodiversity by sharing the benefits from its utilization in a fair and equitable way. All the concepts explained so far are now part of the protocol, which will enter into force when 50 parties have ratified it. This will facilitate access to genetic resources and the sharing of benefits arising from their use. The protocol is to enhance legal certainty for all parties involved in the utilization of genetic resources. And another important element was added to the protocol. Official checkpoints now have to be designated in countries where genetic resources are being utilized. Along the chain of the research and development process, these checkpoints will monitor the use of genetic resources by assisting to verify whether PIC has been obtained and MAT have been established. The collected information will then be sent to relevant authorities and a special public database, the ABS clearinghouse, where it can be reviewed by the country that has provided access to the resource. This allows for the monitoring of a genetic resource once it has left the provider country, from research to innovation and all the way to potential commercialization. This helps to ensure fair sharing of benefits if a product based on a genetic resource is introduced to the market. Now, all ratifying countries need to translate the provisions of the Nagoya Protocol into domestic laws or regulations that reflect the interests of all stakeholders concerned.
Both in the provider and in the user countries, it is time to get down to work. The governments have to discuss what goals they seek to achieve by ABS legislation in their own country, in cooperation with all groups concerned, holders of traditional knowledge, scientists, businesses, as well as NGOs campaigning for the conservation of biodiversity or for fair trade, and what steps are required on the way there.
The Nagoya Protocol is very clear. It really gives everybody a space to be able to be heard, to participate, and also to be able to implement it.
You also have to question how an adequate implementation of the Nagoya Protocol could look like in Switzerland. Are the existing measures sufficient, or do we need additional regulations? For example, take the measures meant to verify that the genetic resources have been obtained legally and that benefits have been shared fair and equitably. Now, who controls what and who is responsible for what? The situation Mr. Meyenberg mentioned before is that a Swiss company doesn't respect a South African legislation.
We've seen that within the ABS there is a strong link with business, and we think the private sector is going to or should be a very key actor in this process.
Our goal here is not to necessarily, or our driving goal hasn't been to make money. Our driving goal has to be to create a partnership and a pilot project to showcase the principles of return benefits for traditional knowledge.
That's what's good about it. Here in Switzerland, an approval process takes place. We all have the opportunity to give our views. Of course, we only want a few checkpoints. We want only what is really necessary, and nothing more.
It's an obligation now for the government. If you have already taken that Nagoya Protocol, you've signed for it, you've signed it and you have accepted it, you've even ratified it, it's your obligation now to make sure that you respect the rights of those communities, and you must recognize them.
To the African continent, we think it is now time for us as a region to be able to, in a very coordinated manner, see how we can ensure that every country translates the provisions of this protocol into their legislation, such that one country is not a beneficiary while the other is not.
The first governments have made a start and signed the protocol. In accordance with the CBD decisions, the target is for every country to create the framework needed to let ABS become a reality to the benefit of nature and people by 2015. So, what important questions have to be addressed now? What do we need to ratify the Nagoya Protocol? Who should be involved in the implementation of the ABS protocol in our country? Which representatives of interest groups? Which NGOs? Which local communities? Which authority is steering the process, gathering the proposals, and organizing the national authority, the focal point? How will access to the genetic resources be granted? How can traditional knowledge be protected and promoted? Who will profit from benefit sharing, and what sort of benefit sharing is suitable? How do we promote transparency and efficiency in the agreements? How do we ensure that the necessary processes take place within a reasonable time frame? What should an ABS certificate look like? What information should be transmitted to the ABS clearinghouse? What kind of legal standards do we need for PIC and MAT? Which existing legislation needs to be adapted, and what new legislation has to be passed to create the legal framework required?
Only when these questions have been addressed and the ABS regulations of the Nagoya Protocol have been put into practice will it be possible to share and use genetic resources on a fair basis. A win-win-win situation, to the benefit of the users, to the benefit of the providers, and for the conservation of nature.